Any further debate or discussion? Seeing none, Senator Mitchell, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd be happy to. There's so many points to attempt to address. Where will I begin? I guess I'll begin at the beginning. Sacramento native, academician, author, Dr. Cornel West penned a book 25 years ago now, and the title was Race Matters. And I would argue that that book title is as relevant today as our experience 50 years ago with the Watts Rebellion, as it was based on the Attorney General's report just this week, based on the reality of the 1,000 Californians who lost their lives at the hand of law enforcement between 2008 and 2012. 20% were African American. 20% in a state whose overall African American population is under 6%. So I'm not sure if it's getting better or not. 25 years ago, when this body considered the issue of driving while black, some of you may remember, the number one issue, an argument for not supporting the bill then, was lack of data, that it was anecdotal. Well, that was before the proliferation of cell phone cameras, where, thanks to Senator Lara's bill, we now have the right to record our interactions with police, for many of us, for our own safety and protection in our communities. So I'm not sure if it's getting better. When the Attorney General estimates that 17% of all arrests in the state of California are young black males. Again, the African American population in the state is under 6%. I am not sure that it's getting better. It would be appropriate from my perspective to focus solely on the fiscal aspects of the bill if that were going to drive every aspect of our conversation in this body. So how do we collectively identify what should be a priority and what's not? Is it a priority to the 20% of the 1,000 lives lost that we prioritize their life? When we talk about law enforcement taking an oath to protect and serve, that's absolutely true, as do we as sitting members of this body. What those oaths don't include, what our training doesn't include, is an acknowledgement of our own racial bias, all of which we all have. It's human nature. So to suggest that an oath taken to protect or preserve somehow erases a lifelong of racial bias is naive at best. $8 million estimate, I appreciate that. But we should compare that to the expense, the potential expense on the other end. Case in point, just yesterday, the state of Maryland agreed to pay the family of the victim, gentleman who lost his life at the hands of law enforcement, $5.6 million over 2 years. So you could either look at it as an investment in humanity, an investment in data collection, which is where some argue where we're supposed to start the process, because the cell phone images, the real life experiences of people of color apparently aren't enough to validate policy changes around body cameras or anything else. So we've been told that our life experience isn't enough. So we come back with an AB 953 to say, well, let's collect data. Let's spend more time validating what people of color live every day. So we'll collect data. But now we don't want to pay for the data collection either. So I'm not sure when we will move beyond the rhetoric of our commitment to a racial utopia, to setting policies to create equity in the experience of the lives of people of color in the great state of California. If not data collection, then what? I heard colleagues talk about their commitment to creating open lines of communication between community and police. What does that look like? I've not seen other examples of legislation that gives us alternatives to debate on this floor or vote upon. I haven't seen it. Perhaps in January, those bills will be introduced. In the meantime, we have before us AB 953, which is an appropriate first step in, as the LAO suggests, defining what racial profiling is so we know what to measure. In years past, in an effort to have this very sensitive conversation, the language has been watered down, influenced largely by law enforcement, who perhaps didn't want to be held accountable. Well, the data that we have thus far shows that communities of color, African American men and women, Latino men and women continue to have a higher interaction with law enforcement, often unsubstantiated by their actions. The time has come to have a clear conversation with law enforcement about what we as a society will no longer accept, and that's racial profiling by those who indeed take an oath to protect and serve all of us fairly and equally. With that, I ask for your aye vote on AB 953.